Don't call too much, my wife said while sliding her charger into the side pocket of her leather suitcase. The meetings are probably going to run late. It should have sounded normal. Business trips were part of Claire's job. Chicago this time. 3 days. Corporate marketing summit downtown, near the river. The kind of thing she used to complain about before she started looking forward to them. But standing there in our bedroom with the soft yellow lamplight falling across the hardwood floor, something about her voice felt wrong. Not nervous. Not guilty. Lighter than usual. Almost excited. That was the moment the temperature changed in my marriage. My name is Ethan Walker, 42 years old. Born and raised outside Columbus, Ohio. I manage industrial HVAC systems for hospitals and office buildings across the Midwest. Not glamorous work. Just compressors, maintenance contracts, long drives, and invoices. The kind of life built on routines. Up at 5:30. Coffee by 5:45. Traffic reports humming through the truck speakers while the rest of the neighborhood stayed dark. For most of my adult life, I believed routines meant stability. That if you paid the mortgage on time, fixed things before they broke, and stayed loyal to the person sleeping beside you, life would mostly hold together. Looking back now, I realize collapse doesn't arrive all at once. It leaks in slowly, quietly, like water inside a wall. Claire stood at the edge of the bed folding clothes with careful precision. Too careful. Her navy dresses were laid flat between layers of tissue paper like she was packing for a photo shoot instead of a conference. I leaned against the doorway watching her move around the room we'd shared for 13 years. There was music playing softly from her phone. Some jazz playlist she only listened to when she was in a good mood. That should have made me happy. Instead, it made my stomach tighten. How many people are going? I asked casually. A few from the regional office, she answered without looking up. Probably around 30. Her tone was smooth. Practiced. Claire had always been good with words. That's part of what made her successful. Marketing executives survive on charm the same way mechanics survive on tools. But marriage teaches you another language entirely. Tiny pauses. Eye contact that disappears too quickly. Smiles that arrive half a second late. People think betrayal starts with hotels and secret phone calls. It doesn't. It starts in the silence between ordinary sentences. I noticed small things that week. Things a husband talks himself out of noticing because the alternative is uglier. A new perfume sitting on the bathroom counter. Not floral like the one she normally wore. Darker. Warmer. Expensive. Then there was the black dress hanging in the closet with the tags still attached. Claire didn't wear dresses like that for corporate seminars. And she definitely didn't wear them around me anymore. You're bringing that for business meetings? I joked one night while grilling burgers out back. She barely smiled. There's a dinner event. Then she changed the subject immediately. That stuck with me. So did the wax appointment on Thursday. And the way she turned her phone face down every time it buzzed. Strange how your brain collects evidence before your heart agrees to look at it. By Friday evening, the house smelled like rain drifting through the screen door and the garlic bread warming in the oven. Claire walked downstairs wearing fitted jeans and a cream sweater, rolling her suitcase behind her toward the front door. She looked beautiful. That was the worst part. Not distant. Not cold. Beautiful in the exact way that reminded me why I married her in the first place. She kissed my cheek near the doorway while headlights from the arriving Uber flashed across the living room walls. Don't work too hard while I'm gone, she said softly. Then she smiled. But it wasn't the smile that haunted me afterward. It was how fast it disappeared the second she turned toward the door, like I was no longer part of the performance. I stood there listening to the wheels of her suitcase rattle down the walkway. The taillights vanished into the wet suburban street. The house went quiet after that. Refrigerator humming. Rain tapping against the gutters. One of those ordinary American nights where nothing looks broken from the outside. I poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon and sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at my reflection in the dark window above the sink. Part of me wanted to feel ridiculous. Jealous husband inventing problems because his marriage had gone stale. But another part of me couldn't shake the feeling growing under my ribs. A feeling older men learn not to ignore. Because instincts don't usually arrive screaming. They whisper first. Around 11:40 that night, I opened my laptop. The glow from the screen lit the empty kitchen in pale blue light, while thunder rolled somewhere beyond the subdivision. My hand stayed strangely calm as I searched hotels near the downtown conference center in Chicago. I found the one her company always used. Modern glass tower. Riverview. Expensive lobby bar. I stared at the booking page for almost a full minute before clicking reserve. King room. 3 nights. Check-in under a shortened version of my middle name. My pulse barely moved. That scared me more than anger would have. Because somewhere deep down, I think I already knew. When the confirmation email hit my inbox, I closed the laptop slowly and finished the bourbon in one swallow. Then I looked around the kitchen we spent 13 years building together and whispered something I still remember word for word. If my wife is lying to me, I said quietly into the empty house, I'm going to hear the truth through the wall. The airport smelled like burned coffee, floor polish, and rain-soaked jackets when I landed in Chicago the next afternoon. O'Hare was packed with business travelers dragging black carry-ons through fluorescent corridors while weather alerts rolled silently across mounted television screens near the gates. Nobody looked at each other for very long. That is the strange thing about airports. Thousands of people moving in different directions while pretending their lives are perfectly under control. I pulled my jacket tighter and followed the crowd toward baggage claim with my phone buzzing in my pocket. Claire. I stared at her name for 2 full seconds before answering. Hey, I said calmly. Her voice came through soft and distracted beneath the muffled sound of conversation. In the background. Just got out of the opening seminar, she said. It is already exhausting. I leaned against a cold concrete pillar watching luggage rotate endlessly beneath fluorescent lights. Long day. You have no idea, she laughed lightly. I probably will not even make it back to the room before midnight. There was that tone again. Easy. Weightless. The kind of voice people use when they are somewhere they want to be. I closed my eyes for a second. Well, I said quietly. Try to get some sleep. I will. Love you. The line disconnected before I answered. I stood there listening to the empty silence on the phone while a little girl nearby cried over a missing stuffed animal. Funny what your mind remembers during moments like that. Not dramatic things. Tiny ordinary sounds. I rented a gray Ford Explorer from the garage across the terminal and drove downtown through sheets of cold spring rain. Chicago rose out of the mist like steel and glass stacked against the clouds. Headlights smeared across wet pavement while the river reflected gold from the high-rise windows above. I had been to the city before for work conferences years ago, back when Claire still reached for my hand in hotel elevators and rested her head on my shoulder during flights. Back when silence between us still felt comfortable instead of dangerous. The hotel stood near the riverfront surrounded by restaurants with glowing patio lights and black SUVs lined along the curb. Valets moved through the rain in tailored coats, while businessmen laughed beneath awnings holding glasses of bourbon that probably cost more than my first car payment. I parked in the underground garage and sat behind the steering wheel for almost a minute staring at my own reflection in the windshield. 42 years old. Married 13 years. About to spy on my wife like a stranger in a bad movie. Part of me still hoped I was wrong. That maybe exhaustion and distance had poisoned my thinking. But hope gets quieter once evidence starts piling up. The lobby smelled like cedarwood and expensive perfume. Soft jazz drifted from hidden ceiling speakers while people checked in beneath enormous hanging lights shaped like falling glass icicles. Nobody noticed me. Just another middle-aged man with a duffel bag and tired eyes standing in line beneath polished marble walls. The woman at the front desk smiled professionally when my turn came. Checking in, Mr. Hayes? She asked, reading the fake reservation name from her screen. That is me. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Too calm. She typed for a moment before handing me a room key inside a black sleeve. 18th floor, she said pleasantly. Room 1814. My stomach tightened immediately. Claire's company confirmation email had listed her suite number earlier that morning when she forwarded me the itinerary by accident instead of her assistant. 1816. 2 doors apart. Close enough to hear a laugh through drywall. The elevator ride felt longer than it probably was. Quiet instrumental music played overhead while mirrored walls reflected exhausted faces under soft recessed lighting. A young couple stood beside me holding shopping bags and whispering about dinner reservations. The woman leaned her head against the man's shoulder absent-mindedly like trust was still the easiest thing in the world. I looked away. The hallway on 18 was silent except for the faint hum of ventilation and the distant clinking of ice from somewhere around the corner. Thick patterned carpet softened every footstep. Hotel walls always look warm until you realize how many lies they have heard. I walked slowly down the corridor, counting room numbers. 1810, 1812. Then I stopped. Room 1814 stood directly across from a framed abstract painting washed in dim yellow light. And 2 doors down sat 1816. Claire's room. My chest felt strangely hollow standing there with the keycard in my hand. 2 doors. 2 lives. I unlocked my room and stepped inside. Modern furniture. River view. Minibar glowing blue near the television. The kind of place designed to make lonely people feel successful. I dropped my duffel beside the bed and loosened my collar while rain streaked down the giant windows overlooking the city below. Somewhere inside this building my wife was getting ready for a night she told me did not exist. I checked the time. 7:42 p.m. Then I heard it. Faint footsteps in the hallway outside my door, followed by the soft sound of laughter. A man's voice. Low. Familiar in the worst possible way. And Claire laughing right beside him. The laughter stopped right outside Claire's door. I stood frozen beside the dark hotel window with the city glowing beneath me while my heartbeat pressed heavy against my ribs. Then came the soft electronic beep of a keycard. A second later, the door to room 1816 opened. I could not see the hallway from where I stood, but I did not need to. I recognized Claire's laugh instantly. 13 years of marriage brands certain sounds into your nervous system forever. The door closed. Silence returned. That was the moment suspicion stopped being theory. I walked slowly toward my own door and pressed my hand against the cold brass handle without opening it. Part of me wanted to step into the hallway immediately, to force reality into the open before my imagination made it worse. But another part of me knew something important. Once truth reveals itself completely, there is no returning to ignorance. I stayed inside. The room suddenly felt smaller than before. Air conditioning humming softly. Ice rattling somewhere down the hall. The river outside reflecting silver beneath the rain. Every sound seemed amplified now that my mind had nowhere left to hide. I loosened my tie and sat on the edge of the bed staring at the wall separating my room from hers. Drywall. Paint. Wood framing. Amazing how something so thin can hold together entire double lives. Around 9 o'clock, I heard movement again. Muffled footsteps. Cabinet doors. Faint laughter drifting through the wall like smoke under a doorway. Then a man's voice. Calm. Comfortable. Not nervous the way an innocent coworker would sound alone in a married woman's hotel room at night. No, this sounded practiced. Familiar. My stomach tightened so hard it almost hurt. I recognized him a few seconds later when he laughed again. Daniel Brooks, regional sales director for Claire's company. Tall guy, mid-40s. Expensive watches. The kind of man who shook your hand too. Firmly at office holiday parties while calling everyone buddy. I met him twice before. Once at a corporate dinner in Cincinnati and another time at a charity event downtown. Claire used to roll her eyes whenever he talked too long about himself in front of people. Funny how memories rewrite themselves once betrayal enters the room. I sat motionless listening to their voices rise and fall through the wall. Not every word. Just fragments. Enough to understand tone. Comfort. Ease. Intimacy built over time instead of one reckless mistake. That realization cut deeper than anger ever could. Affairs are ugly enough on their own, but emotional rehearsals are worse. The private jokes, the shared routines, the hidden version of your spouse that belongs to someone else now. Around 9:30, my phone buzzed against the nightstand. Claire. I stared at her name glowing against the dark room, while Daniel's muffled voice drifted faintly through the wall beside me. Then I answered. Hey, I said quietly. Her voice came smooth and controlled. Sorry, I have not checked in much. Networking dinner ran long. Networking dinner. I looked toward the wall separating us. Sounds busy. Completely exhausting, she sighed softly. Honestly, I might just shower and go straight to bed. There are moments in life when disappointment becomes physical. Not dramatic. Not explosive. Just heavy. Like wet concrete settling slowly inside your chest. I closed my eyes and listened carefully. Somewhere behind Claire's voice I heard the faint clink of glass and Daniel laughing again farther inside the room. She either thought I would never notice or she stopped caring whether I did. I still do not know which truth hurt worse. Well, I answered calmly. Do not stay up too late. I will not, she said gently. Good night, Ethan. Then the line disconnected. I lowered the phone slowly while rain tapped against the giant windows overlooking downtown Chicago. The room smelled faintly of coffee grounds and hotel detergent. Ordinary smells. Ordinary night. That is the terrifying thing about betrayal. Most of it happens in completely normal places. A hallway. A business trip. A room beside yours. I should have been furious. Instead, I felt tired. Deep tired. The kind that reaches beyond sleep. I stood and walked quietly toward the adjoining wall separating our rooms. My footsteps disappeared into the thick carpet while the city lights flickered across the ceiling. Then I heard Claire's voice clearly for the first time through the drywall. Soft. Relaxed. Younger somehow. He still thinks I am here for work, she said quietly. Daniel laughed under his breath. That makes this easier. My chest hollowed out completely after that. Not because of what they were doing. Because of how casually they discussed me like I was already gone. Like our marriage was just paperwork waiting to catch up with reality. I leaned my forehead against the cold wall and stared into the dark room around me. For 13 years I fixed things before they broke. Faucets, engines, air systems, budgets, schedules, problems. That is what men like me do. We maintain. We repair. We hold the line quietly while life keeps moving. But standing there in room 1814 listening to my wife laugh with another man through hotel drywall, I realized something brutal. Some things do not break loudly. Some things rot in silence until one ordinary night the wall finally gives way. Sleep never came that night. I lay on top of the hotel sheets fully dressed with one lamp glowing beside the bed while Chicago traffic moved like rivers of red and white beneath the rain outside. Every now and then I heard muffled movement through the wall. A laugh. Water running. The dull sound of footsteps crossing carpet. Strange how quickly your mind starts measuring silence once trust disappears. Around 1 in the morning, I gave up pretending to rest and walked toward the window, holding the small hotel coffee cup they leave beside the machine no one ever uses. The coffee tasted burnt and bitter. Fitting, honestly. Downtown Chicago stretched below me in wet reflections and blinking rooftop lights, while thunder rolled somewhere beyond the lake. Most people think heartbreak feels dramatic. It does not. Most of the time it feels administrative. Quiet. Cold. Like sitting alone in a hotel room realizing your entire future just changed shape without asking permission first. I kept thinking about our house back in Ohio. The crack in the driveway I never fixed before winter. Claire's favorite coffee mug hanging on the second hook beside the stove. The blanket folded at the corner of the couch where she used to fall asleep during late movies years ago when we still touched each other without effort. That is the dangerous thing about memory. It keeps showing you old photographs while your present life burns down around you. Around 2:15, the hallway outside grew quiet again. I checked my phone. No messages from Claire. No explanation. No guilt. Just silence. I opened my laptop slowly at the desk near the television and stared at the screen while the air conditioner hummed softly overhead. Then I did something I never thought I would do in my marriage. I searched for a divorce attorney. The words looked unreal typed into the glowing search bar. Divorce attorney, downtown Chicago emergency consultation. My fingers stayed still above the keyboard afterward. Men like me do not reach decisions quickly. We repair first. We tolerate. We explain things away until there is nothing left to explain. But listening to Claire through that wall earlier had changed something permanent inside me. Not because she betrayed me, because she erased me while doing it. There is a difference. I found a 24-hour legal consultation service and saved the number without calling. Not yet. The room suddenly felt too warm. I loosened my collar again and walked into the bathroom, splashing cold water across my face beneath the bright mirror lights. Tired eyes. Gray beginning near my temples. A man who spent 13 years believing loyalty alone could hold a marriage together. Looking back now, I think Claire stopped seeing me long before I stopped seeing her. Around 3 in the morning, I finally heard another sound outside in the hallway. A door opening softly. Low voices. I killed the bathroom light immediately and stood still inside the dark room listening. Footsteps passed slowly beyond my door, followed by Claire laughing under her breath again. Not loudly this time. Comfortable. Intimate. The kind of laugh people save for private moments. Then came the soft ding of the elevator at the far end of the hallway. Silence returned after that. I walked carefully toward the peephole and looked outside. Empty corridor. Dim yellow lights reflecting off patterned carpet. Whatever they were doing tonight had moved somewhere else now. Maybe another room. Maybe the hotel bar downstairs. I realized then something ugly about betrayal. Once trust dies, your imagination becomes its own punishment. Every missing minute grows teeth. By 6:30 the rain had finally stopped. Pale morning light spilled between the buildings outside, while the city slowly woke beneath my window. Delivery trucks crawled through intersections below. Steam drifted from rooftop vents into the cold air. I had not slept for even 10 minutes. My phone buzzed suddenly against the desk, making my pulse jump harder than it should have. Claire. I answered after one ring. Morning, I said calmly. Her voice sounded sleepy now. Hey, sorry I crashed early last night. I was exhausted. I closed my eyes briefly. The lies were becoming effortless for her. That part hurt more than the affair itself. Long conference? I asked quietly. Brutal, she sighed. I barely made it back to the room before midnight. Through the receiver, I heard movement behind her. A door closing softly somewhere nearby. Then a man coughing faintly in the distance before the sound disappeared. Claire paused for half a second too long afterward. I should get downstairs soon, she added quickly. First seminar starts at 8. I stared at the gray morning skyline outside my window while my chest turned strangely calm. Not numb. Focused. Like something inside me finally accepted reality during the night. Have a good day, I said. Love you. The words hung there between us. Hollow. Weightless. I swallowed once before answering. You too. Then I ended the call first. The room stayed silent except for traffic below and the ticking sound from the cheap hotel clock beside the bed. I sat there for a long moment staring at nothing. Then I opened my laptop again. This time I called the lawyer. The lawyer's name was Rebecca Sloan. Mid-50s. Calm voice. No wasted words. She answered from a downtown office while I sat alone beside the hotel window, watching morning traffic crawl through wet Chicago streets below. Mr. Walker, she said evenly after I explained enough for her to understand the situation. Before you make emotional decisions, you need documentation, financial awareness, and distance from confrontation. Distance from confrontation. Funny phrase. Like betrayal was whether you needed shelter from instead of a knife sliding slowly between your ribs. I listened quietly while she explained practical things most married people never imagined discussing. Joint accounts, property records, retirement funds, digital copies of statements. She talked about evidence the same way mechanics talk about engine failure. Calm, systematic, without drama. Something about that steadiness grounded me. Do not threaten anything yet, she added carefully. People become unpredictable once they realize consequences are real. I looked toward the wall separating my room from Claire's. Too late for unpredictable, I said quietly. Rebecca paused for a second before speaking again. Then stay calm enough to think clearly. Calm wins. The call lasted 38 minutes. By the time it ended, I had emailed her copies of our shared financial summaries, mortgage information, and screenshots from Claire's company itinerary. Nothing explosive, just structure, preparation. The first cold bricks of a life being dismantled carefully instead of emotionally. That afternoon, the city warmed beneath pale sunlight breaking through the clouds. Chicago looked different during daylight. Less cinematic, more honest somehow. Steam rising from food carts. Construction crews shouting across intersections. Businessmen carrying coffee cups while staring into phones that probably held secrets of their own. I spent most of the day moving carefully through routine motions because routine was the only thing keeping me steady. I shaved, changed clothes, ate half a sandwich downstairs in the lobby cafe, even though I could barely taste it. Every now and then I saw conference attendees crossing the hotel lobby wearing company badges around there. Next, while laughing in little circles near the elevators. Once I caught sight of Claire across the atrium near the front desk. My chest tightened instantly. She wore the navy dress from our closet back home with a white blazer and silver earrings I bought her on our 10th anniversary. Daniel stood beside her holding coffee while she laughed at something he whispered. Neither of them noticed me seated behind a row of decorative plants near the cafe entrance. I watched Claire tuck loose hair behind her ear while Daniel leaned slightly closer than a coworker should. Comfortable distance. Familiar distance. The kind people stop noticing after months of crossing boundaries privately. For a moment, I remembered another conference years earlier in Nashville when Claire called me 3 times in one afternoon just because she missed hearing my voice. Back then, she still sent me photographs of hotel room service meals and complained about boring keynote speakers. Back then, I was part of her world instead of an obstacle she stepped around. She touched Daniel's arm briefly before they disappeared into the elevator together. Small gesture. Casual. But it landed heavier than screaming ever could. I stayed hidden until the lobby settled again. Around 6 that evening, I returned upstairs after walking nearly 2 miles through downtown, trying unsuccessfully to outrun my own thoughts. The hallway outside our room smelled faintly of carpet cleaner and stale air conditioning. I unlocked my door slowly and stopped the second I stepped inside. Voices. Through the wall again. Closer this time. Claire sounded relaxed. Happy even. I sat carefully on the edge of the bed, listening despite hating myself for it. Daniel was talking about a presentation earlier in the day, while Claire laughed softly between sentences. Then came a silence that stretched too long before Claire spoke again. "Do you ever think about how strange this would look if people knew?" she asked quietly. My entire body went still. Daniel laughed under his breath. "You mean your husband?" Another pause. Then Claire answered with a softness that nearly broke me. "Ethan stopped really seeing me years ago." I stared down at my hands in complete silence after that. Men hear a sentence like that and immediately start replaying entire decades, searching for where the road cracked open. Was it the overtime hours? The weekends fixing furnaces instead of taking vacations? The nights I fell asleep exhausted beside her, believing providing stability was the same thing as intimacy? Maybe marriages do not collapse in dramatic moments after all. Maybe they erode quietly beneath ordinary life until two people wake up speaking completely different emotional languages. Through the wall, Daniel said something too muffled to hear clearly. Claire laughed again afterward, lighter than I had heard her laugh in years. That was the part that hollowed me out completely. Not betrayal itself. Replacement. The realization that another man was now receiving the version of my wife I kept hoping would eventually return home to me. Outside, evenings settled across the city while headlights flickered alive one by one beneath the darkening skyline. I sat motionless in room 1814, listening to the woman I married become someone else through 12 inches of drywall and hotel insulation. Then my phone buzzed softly beside me. A fraud alert from our bank. Claire had just charged $640 to our joint account at the hotel Rooftop Steakhouse. The fraud alert stayed glowing on my phone screen long after the notification disappeared. $640 at a rooftop steakhouse overlooking the Chicago River. Charged to the same account that paid our mortgage, our utilities, the insurance on Claire's Lexus sitting back home in Ohio. Funny how betrayal turns ordinary banking notifications into emotional crime scenes. I sat alone at the edge of the hotel bed, staring at the dark television, while muffled city noise drifted faintly through the windows 20 stories above the street. Somewhere downstairs, my wife was eating candlelit dinners with another man while telling me conference seminars were exhausting her. I should have felt rage by then. Instead, I felt clarity. Cold clarity. The kind that arrives once denial finally burns itself out. I opened the bank application slowly and reviewed the account history line by line. Smaller charges began standing out immediately once I stopped looking at our marriage through the lens of trust. Wine bars during previous conferences. Boutique hotel restaurants. Rideshare receipts at strange hours in unfamiliar cities. Tiny fractures hidden inside ordinary life. Looking back, I think betrayal leaves breadcrumbs everywhere. Loyal people just refuse to follow them. Around 7:30, I heard movement outside my door again. Voices drifting down the hallway. I walked silently toward the peephole and looked out. Claire stood beside Daniel near the elevator, wearing the black dress from our closet back home. The expensive one she claimed was for networking events. Her hair fell loosely around her shoulders while Daniel leaned close enough to murmur something directly into her ear. She laughed softly and touched his chest for half a second before noticing someone exiting another room farther down the hallway. Instantly, her posture changed. Professional. Controlled. Like she had flipped a switch. That moment taught me something ugly about deception. People who live double lives become actors without realizing it. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. Claire stepped inside beside him without ever looking toward room 1814. Toward me. I stayed frozen behind the door long after they disappeared downstairs. Then I made another decision I never imagined making. I followed them. The rooftop restaurant sat above the hotel beneath glass walls overlooking the river and downtown skyline, glowing blue against the night. Jazz music drifted softly through the air, while businessmen loosened ties beside women wearing polished smiles and expensive heels. The entire place smelled like grilled steak, bourbon, and money. I stayed near the back lounge area where shadows from decorative plants partially blocked the dining room from view. Claire and Daniel sat near the windows laughing over drinks while the city lights reflected across the glass behind them. They looked comfortable together. Not reckless. Not nervous. Comfortable is worse. Comfortable means history. I watched Claire smile in ways I had not seen. Directed at me in years. Leaning forward slightly while listening. Holding eye contact longer than necessary. Resting her hand near his wrist during conversation like intimacy had become muscle memory between them. At one point Daniel said something that made her laugh hard enough to lower her head briefly toward the table. I remembered that laugh from our 20s. Before mortgages. Before routines. Before emotional distance turned our house into a place where two people mostly exchanged schedules and grocery lists. Funny thing about heartbreak. Sometimes it is not losing the person that destroys you. Sometimes it is realizing how long ago you already lost them. I ordered black coffee. I did not want just to avoid attracting attention from the staff. Steam curled upward beneath the dim restaurant lights, while rain started again beyond the windows overlooking the river walk below. Around me people celebrated birthdays, business deals, anniversaries. Entire rooms full of strangers sitting beside private disappointments nobody else could see. Claire checked her phone once during dinner and smiled faintly. Probably another lie for me waiting to be typed later. Instead, she slid the phone face down and reached for her wine glass again. Casual. Experienced. Daniel leaned back comfortably in his chair. Does he suspect anything? I heard him ask quietly during a lull in the music nearby. My chest tightened immediately. Claire took a slow sip before answering. Ethan notices air filter schedules and furnace noises, she said with a soft laugh. Not relationships. The table laughed quietly with her words. That sentence hit harder than every other moment combined. Not because she insulted me. Because somewhere inside that joke lived years of resentment I never fully saw while trying to be dependable instead of emotionally present. Men like me grow up believing stability equals love. Keep the lights on. Pay the bills. Show up every day. But sitting there hidden behind decorative plants while my wife mocked my blind loyalty over steak and expensive wine, I realized something brutal. Reliability without connection slowly turns invisible. Claire looked out across the skyline. Afterward, while Daniel watched her with the kind of attention she used to give me once upon a time. Then she said something quietly that hollowed me out completely. I do not even know if I love him anymore. Silence followed at their table for a moment after that. Heavy. Real. Daniel reached across slowly and squeezed her hand. I looked away immediately toward the rain sliding down the glass windows beside the city lights outside. Not because I could not handle seeing it. Because deep down I finally understood the truth. I was not listening to a temporary mistake unfold anymore. I was watching the final stage of a marriage die in real time. After that dinner, I stopped thinking like a husband and started thinking like a man preparing for impact. There is a difference. Husbands bargain with memories. Men preparing for impact count exits, paperwork, and consequences. I stayed in the rooftop lounge another 15 minutes after Claire and Daniel left because I needed my pulse to slow down before stepping back into the same elevator with them. Rain streaked the glass walls behind me, while waiters cleared empty wine glasses beneath dim amber lighting. Somewhere below, Chicago traffic hissed through wet streets like static. I remember staring into my untouched coffee thinking about how ordinary heartbreak looks from the outside. No explosions. No screaming. Just a middle-aged man sitting alone in a crowded restaurant realizing his marriage officially belongs to the past tense now. By the time I returned upstairs, the hallway outside room 1816 was quiet again. I unlocked my door carefully and stood still inside the dark room listening to the silence through the wall. Nothing. No laughter this time. No voices. Just the soft hum of hotel ventilation and distant elevator chimes farther down the corridor. I loosened my tie and sat at the desk near the window overlooking the river. Then I opened my laptop again. Rebecca Sloan answered on the second ring. "You sound different," she said immediately. I looked out across the skyline, glowing silver beneath the rain clouds. I answered quietly. There was no emotion left in my voice now. Just exhaustion and focus. I spent the next hour forwarding documents while Rebecca guided me through practical next steps. Separate accounts, credit monitoring, property protection. She told me not to drain joint finances because judges hate retaliation. Calm wins. I kept hearing her repeat that phrase. Calm wins. So while my wife slept 2 doors away believing I was back in Ohio changing furnace filters and paying utility bills, I quietly began dismantling the life we built together one document at a time. I transferred half our savings into a separate account under legal recommendation. Not revenge. Protection. There is a difference there too. I changed passwords connected to my retirement accounts, updated emergency contacts, and downloaded years of financial records onto an encrypted drive Rebecca recommended I purchase before leaving the airport earlier that day. Strange what survival looks like in middle age. Not fists. Password resets. Digital copies. Signatures. Around midnight, my phone buzzed again. Claire. I stared at her name before answering. Hey, I said calmly. Her voice sounded softer than usual now. Tired. I miss you, she whispered. That sentence nearly made me laugh out loud from the sheer cruelty of it. Not intentional cruelty. Worse, casual cruelty. The kind people deliver when they have emotionally rewritten reality enough to believe their own performance. I leaned back slowly in the desk chair while city lights reflected across the dark hotel windows. Long day? I asked. Endless, she sighed. I barely ate dinner. Honestly, I might just order room service and crash. The lie landed differently now. Earlier it hurt. Now it sounded procedural. Predictable. Like listening to weather reports you already know are false. Well, I answered quietly. Try to get some sleep. I love you, Ethan. There was a pause before I responded. Long enough for silence to become noticeable between us. Good night, Claire. Then I ended the call again before she could say anything else. My hand stayed wrapped around the phone afterward while the room settled into stillness around me. Funny thing about emotional collapse. There is always a moment when grief stops chasing answers and starts building distance instead. Around 1:30 in the morning, I heard the adjoining wall creak faintly beside the bed. Footsteps. A drawer opening. Water running softly somewhere beyond the drywall. I did not move this time. I did not listen carefully for details anymore. That part of me had already died downstairs in the restaurant while Claire joked about me not noticing relationships. Instead, I focused on practical things. I emailed Rebecca screenshots of the hotel charge notifications. I drafted a timeline of events while details remained fresh. Dates, conversations, expenses, statements. It felt cold doing it. Mechanical. But betrayal forces ordinary people into strange versions of themselves. Around 2 in the morning, I finally stood and walked toward the giant window overlooking downtown Chicago. Rain had stopped again. The streets below glowed under traffic lights and reflections, while distant sirens echoed faintly somewhere across the city. Behind me, 2 hotel walls away, my marriage was still pretending to exist. I slipped my wedding ring slowly from my finger and rolled it once between my thumb and palm. 13 years reduced to a thin circle of gold catching hotel light in an empty room. I remembered standing beside Claire at our wedding reception while she laughed into my shoulder during our first dance. Back then, I honestly believed loyalty guaranteed permanence. But people change quietly. They drift inch by inch until one day they are sitting across from someone else at a rooftop dinner, saying they do not know if they love you anymore. I placed the ring carefully on the nightstand beside the bed and stared at it for a long moment without blinking. Then I whispered something into the silence I never thought I would say about my own marriage. I am done protecting someone who stopped protecting me. Morning arrived gray and cold over Chicago. The kind of Midwest morning where the sky looks heavy enough to fall directly onto the buildings below. I barely slept 2 hours. The hotel room smelled stale now, like burnt coffee and recycled air conditioning after too many sleepless nights. My wedding ring still sat on the nightstand catching pale light from the windows while traffic crawled silently beside the river 20 floors below. For a long moment, I just stood there staring at it. Funny how objects lose meaning overnight. 24 hours earlier, that ring represented loyalty, history, permanence. Now it looked like evidence from another man's life. My phone buzzed around 7:15. Rebecca Sloan again. You ready? She asked calmly after I answered. I looked toward the wall separating my room from Claire's. No, I admitted quietly. But I am clear. There was a pause on the line before she spoke again. That matters more. We spent 15 minutes reviewing practical next steps. She already drafted preliminary separation paperwork and emailed copies for me to review later that afternoon. Calm wins. She kept repeating it. Not because calm removes pain. Because panic makes people surrender leverage they never get back. After the call ended, I showered slowly and dressed with mechanical precision. Gray slacks, white button-down shirt, dark jacket. The same kind of outfit I wore to contractor meetings and equipment inspections back home in Ohio. Nothing dramatic. Nothing emotional. Men like me are raised to believe composure equals strength. Sometimes it does. Sometimes composure is just grief standing perfectly still. Around 8:30, the hallway outside room 1816 came alive with movement again. Elevator chimes. Voices. Conference attendees heading downstairs carrying laptops and coffee cups while pretending exhaustion was the hardest thing waiting for them that day. I opened my door quietly and stepped into the corridor, holding a paper coffee cup from the lobby downstairs. Then I sat in the upholstered chair beside the ice machine directly across from Claire's room. Calm. Still. The hallway lights cast soft yellow reflections across the carpet while distant housekeeping carts rattled faintly somewhere around the corner. I checked my watch once. 8:37. Then I waited. A few minutes later, I heard movement inside her room. Cabinet doors opening. Water running briefly. Muffled voices. Daniel's voice low and relaxed. My chest tightened once, but the feeling passed. Quickly now. Something inside me had already crossed the point where panic could survive. At 8:42, the door opened. Claire stepped out first, wearing a cream blazer over the black dress from the night before. Her hair was still slightly damp from the shower. Daniel stood behind her adjusting his tie while scrolling through something on his phone. They both froze the second they noticed me sitting there beside the ice machine, holding coffee. I will remember Claire's face for the rest of my life. Not because she looked guilty. Because for one split second, every version of herself collapsed at once. Wife. Professional. Liar. Stranger. Her entire expression emptied out like someone pulled the floor from underneath her body. Ethan, she whispered. Daniel looked between us immediately, color draining from his face. Nobody moved. The hallway suddenly felt painfully quiet except for the hum of the ice machine beside me and the distant ding of an elevator opening farther down the corridor. I stood slowly, calmly. My pulse stayed steady. That surprised even me. Morning, Claire, I said softly. Her eyes dropped toward the coffee cup in my hand like she still could not process what she was seeing. What are you doing here? She asked breathlessly. I looked past her toward the open hotel room behind them. 2 coffee cups beside the window. 1 king bed still unmade. Daniel finally found his voice. Ethan, listen man, this is not. I raised one hand slightly without even looking at him. Do not, I said quietly. Not angry. Not loud. Just final. Silence crashed back over the hallway. Claire's breathing turned shallow. You followed me, she whispered. Funny thing about betrayal. People always act shocked when the truth arrives instead of when the lying starts. I looked directly into her eyes for the first time since arriving in Chicago. No, I answered calmly. I finally paid attention. That sentence landed harder than shouting ever could have. Claire's mouth parted slightly, but no words came out. Daniel stepped backward inside the room like he already understood this situation had become radioactive. I reached inside my jacket slowly and removed a thin manila envelope. Inside were printed bank records, screenshots, copies of hotel charges, and Rebecca Sloan's business card attached neatly to the front with a paperclip. Claire stared at the envelope without touching it. Her hands had started trembling now. I already spoke with an attorney, I said quietly. Half the joint savings has been legally separated for protection. The mortgage payments will continue until the house situation is resolved. Do not touch the retirement accounts. Claire blinked rapidly like her brain could not catch up fast enough. Ethan, please, she whispered. You do not understand. I almost smiled hearing that. Not because it was funny. Because every betrayal story eventually reaches the same pathetic sentence. You do not understand. I looked once toward Daniel standing silent inside the room before returning my eyes to Claire. Actually, I said softly, I understand everything now. Then I placed the envelope gently into her shaking hands, turned toward the elevators, and walked away without looking back. The elevator doors closed between us with a soft metallic hum. That was it. No screaming. No dramatic scene. No security called to the hallway. Just silence, swallowing 13 years of marriage while fluorescent numbers descended slowly toward the lobby. 18, 17, 16. I stood alone inside the mirrored elevator, watching my reflection stare back at me like a stranger who finally woke up. My hands were steady now. Funny thing about emotional shock. Once the worst moment arrives, your body sometimes relaxes because it no longer has to fear imagination. Reality is cleaner than uncertainty. The lobby was busy with conference guests checking out beneath giant hanging lights while rain clouds drifted low beyond the glass entrance overlooking the river. Nobody noticed the middle-aged man walking calmly across polished marble floors carrying a duffel bag and a wedding ring in his coat pocket. That is the strange part about personal collapse. The world keeps moving like nothing happened. Espresso machines hiss. Valets open doors. Phones ring. Somewhere nearby, a businessman laughed loudly at something harmless while my entire future rearranged itself beneath my ribs. I checked out quietly at the front desk. "Everything satisfactory with your stay, Mr. Hayes?" the young woman asked politely without looking up from her monitor. I almost answered honestly. Instead, I nodded once. Fine. The word tasted empty, leaving my mouth. Outside, cold wind rolled off the river carrying the smell of rain and traffic through downtown Chicago. I stood beneath the hotel awning for a moment, watching water ripple across the street while taxis crawled through the morning rush. My phone buzzed 3 times in under 10 seconds. Claire. Then again. Then again. I looked at the screen without answering. A few seconds later, another message appeared. Please talk to me. Then another. This is not what you think. Funny how people always say that after getting caught standing directly inside what you think. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and walked toward the parking garage. The city looked washed out beneath the gray sky. Steam drifted from subway vents while pedestrians hurried past holding umbrellas against the drizzle. Everyone looked busy, purposeful, like they still believed life followed predictable rules. I used to believe that too. The rental SUV smelled faintly of damp fabric and stale coffee when I climbed inside. For a long moment, I just sat there gripping the steering wheel without starting the engine. Exhaustion settled over me heavier than anger ever had. Not because Claire betrayed me, because I realized how long I kept trying to save something she quietly stopped choosing. There is grief in that kind of understanding. Deep grief. I finally started the engine and pulled slowly out of the garage into downtown traffic. My phone kept vibrating beside me every few minutes. Calls, texts, voicemails stacking up like floodwater behind a cracked dam. I ignored all of them. Calm winds. Rebecca Sloan's voice kept echoing in my head. Calm winds. About 40 minutes outside the city, I stopped at a gas station near the interstate. Gray clouds stretched endlessly above wet farmland while semi-trucks thundered past on the highway beyond the parking lot. I bought black coffee and stood beside the hood of the SUV, staring across empty Illinois fields while cold wind pushed against my jacket. That was when I finally listened to Claire's voicemail. Her voice sounded shaky now. Real panic underneath it. "Ethan, please answer me," she whispered. "Please. I know how this looks." I closed my eyes briefly hearing that sentence. Looks. As if appearances were somehow the problem instead of betrayal itself. Her breathing trembled softly through the speaker. "Daniel does not mean anything," she said quickly. "Things have just been complicated between us for a long time, and I made mistakes." Mistakes. Strange word for repeated lies, hidden hotel dinners, secret rooms, and laughing about your husband behind closed doors. I deleted the voicemail before it finished. Then I slipped my wedding ring from my pocket and held it between my fingers one last time beneath the cold gray sky. Water droplets clung to the gold band while trucks roared down the interstate nearby. I thought about our wedding day again. Claire dancing barefoot near the reception tables after midnight, while country music played too loudly through rented speakers. The way she cried during our vows. The way I honestly believed loyalty could protect 2 people from becoming strangers. Maybe that is adulthood in the end. Realizing love alone does not stop drift. I looked toward the endless highway stretching east back toward Ohio, and finally dropped the ring into the gas station trash can beside the pumps. No dramatic speech. No tears. Just a soft metallic sound disappearing beneath coffee cups and crumpled receipts. Then I climbed back into the SUV and drove home through the rain. Somewhere behind me in downtown Chicago, my wife was probably standing in a hotel hallway, trying to explain the collapse of a marriage she stopped protecting long before I stopped believing in it. And somewhere ahead of me waited lawyers, paperwork, empty rooms, and a different version of life than the one I thought I built. But as the miles rolled beneath my tires and the city disappeared slowly in the rearview mirror, I realized something strange. The silence inside me no longer felt broken. It felt free, because some marriages do not end with screaming or slammed doors. Some end quietly through hotel walls, unanswered calls, and one ordinary morning when a man finally decides he deserves honesty more than history. Thank you for watching until the end. Watch the full story in the comments and video description. Like and subscribe to the channel to see more interesting content.